Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody, to this public talk of the Spiritual School of the Golden Rosycross. I must start by apologizing to you because English is not my mother tongue, right? I know that we are in an international place, but I think it's okay to apologize to you, okay? Because you're going to bear with my accent and probably with my mistakes for the next hour or so. And but I believe that if we can speak heart to heart, that we can communicate, right? And can understand very well each other. The first session that we have this afternoon is going to be in English. It's going to be from 3-ish to 5, right? And then from 5 to 7 approximately, we are going to have the second one in Spanish as well. And the way that this is going to work is we're going to have an introduction of the theme. We'll try to cut it short. We know that some of you have appointments. So we'll try to do that between 30 and 40 minutes or 40 minutes. And then we'll open up for your questions, your comments, and things that you'd like to ask about not only what we have shared with you this afternoon, but eventually on your own personal research about the Rosycross, etc. Okay? Well, one word about the school. The name is very important because we are not a religion, we are not a sect, we are not a cult. We respect all those lines, of course, but we call ourselves a school. Because from the moment that a person joins the school until the moment that that person goes, and leaves the physical body, not to say that the person dies, right? But it happens. That person calls himself or herself a pupil. Because, the only true commitment that we have since the very beginning until the end is to learn, to be open, and to continue with this process of self-discovery. Because we also call all ourselves pupils. We don't have masters. The only master that we recognize is the inner principle, the spirit, the true universal principle that lies within each person. And that is the only master. Right? And the process of a life of a pupil is to go through a path of a self-revolution so that she or he can finally integrate with himself or herself with this principle. The school is obviously an international organization. We have between 15,000 or 16,000 pupils spread 44, almost 50 countries. And the activities of the school are public talks like this and the work of the school for the pupils. So the people that after these talks, they are truly interested and they identify themselves with the knowledge, with the message that the school brings about, that person may decide, or not obviously, to join the school, to actually become a pupil or not. And the objective of these talks is not to increase the number of pupils, of course. We are here merely to share with you, the knowledge of the Golden Rosycross. That, by the way, dear friends, is absolutely nothing new. We don't think and we don't expect that we are going to tell you anything that has not been announced in the past by all the spiritual schools of the past, by all the universal teaching of the past, because that teaching is, as it says, universal. It belongs to mankind. It belongs to all nations, to all times, and that is a treasure of every person. And the purpose of the school is not that you know something, but that you actually recognize something that already lies within you. So that brings us to the theme of this afternoon, right? The famous motto of the Temple of Delphi, or Delphi, in Greece. One of the countless sentences that were carved in those stones that says, and I'll not be able to quote everything, so I apologize, I'll quote it short, but it says, know yourself, and you will know the gods and the universe. This knowledge, this true inner self-knowledge, is what the school brings. It's not an accumulation of external knowledge. It's not an accumulation of esoteric knowledge. As a matter of fact, it is truly to share this inner knowledge that lies already inside of every person that has awakened up and is looking for the truth. And this motto of Delphi is so important because it gives us a key to a true transformation. It says, know yourself, and you will know the gods and the universe. So it says that if we find the keys to discover who we truly are, we will be able to understand the forces of nature. So it doesn't refer to an external God, but gods here is an indication of the true forces of nature and the whole universe. In classic terms, it is man, the cosmos, and the macrocosm. Hermes Trismegistus would refer to that. Also, the classic Rosicrucians would say that they would possess only 2 books, and with those 2 books they could read all the libraries that existed. They said that if you had access to book T, and book T here refers to the word in Greek of theos or theon. So the book, please welcome. So the book of God, not an external God, but this inner, true, universal principle that we carry. If someone could read that book, or in other words, if the consciousness of a human being can actually become integrated with that true center in you, then you can read the second book, the book M, that they would call the Librum Mundi, or the book of the world, the book of nature. So it means that whomever deciphers himself or herself can decipher all the secrets of all the universe. So let's start really the theme, talking a little bit about yourself, myself, anybody. Let's, hypothetically start asking you, who are you? Your name is not an answer. It's just your name. Your thoughts are actually not exactly your thoughts. If you truly pay attention to them, you're going to find out that many of them were offered to you, given to you. Sometimes openly, sometimes not so openly. Your emotions, very similar to your thoughts. Many of them are the product of the interaction of the place you are, of the people you are surrounded by. Your reactions, maybe, but do you actually control them, or they control you? Then the place you were born, maybe, but that's just the place you were born. Many of us, we came from so many different places, and here we are all together. So it's not what truly binds us, what truly defines us. Our body, but do we truly believe And I don't think that we would all be here on such a sunny afternoon on a Saturday, right? If we believed that when we lost this body that ourselves would be gone, right? So what is you, or what is yourself? That is the true beginning of trying to answer or to follow that path of this suggestion of the motto of Delphi or Delphi. Know yourself. But to know yourself, you must at least discover who you are in the first place. What the universal teaching tells us is that beyond our existence, beyond the veil of our vehicles, that there is a true self, that is a particle, that is a principle, that is, a true center of awareness, of consciousness, that in the vast majority of people is still dormant. But in many, many people, this particle, this principle, this center, if you want, it is awakened. And when it is awakened, come in, please, no problem. When it is awakened, then we actually become seekers of something that we cannot define. Many people will define that as seeking your own self, seeking your own essence, seeking the true nature of your being. This true self, this true center, this principle, was defined with many different names in different times. But in essence, it is always the same. In Egypt and even in China, it was defined as the Lotus Flower. The flower, the so beautiful flower that emerges out of the mud of our apparently shallow and muddy reality, right? The Rosicrucians of the past defined it as a rose. And I don't want to dismantle this so nice vase here, but I'll dare picking up a rose here. If you look at a rose from this perspective, and not necessarily this perspective only, you can realize that this rose is a powerful symbol. Because even when it is a rosebud, all the petals are in there. Just like all the dimensions of a multidimensional reality that lies within us. And the purpose of the Rosicrucians was to allow this rose to blossom and to become a vortex of energy and consciousness inside of the human being. And that's why they would define themselves as Rosicrucians, the ones that had as an objective to unite the cross of this nature, not an external cross of someone that was nailed to the cross, but the cross of our personality, of our time-space existence with this eternal principle. It was also called in the gospel, and we are quoting the gospel as a true reference and not as a religious source. But in those texts, you can find this principle described as the mustard seed. And why was it chosen, that symbol of a mustard seed? Because at that time, it was probably one of the tiniest known things to man. And it was said that if our faith, not our belief in a dogma, but faith in the original sense of a connection. So it means if the connection between our consciousness and that principle was strong enough, we could move the inner mountains of our being and go through a major transformation. It was also referred to as a spark And the spiritual school of the Golden Rosycross refers to this principle as the tiniest thing known at the time that the school was created, almost 100 years ago, an atom. The school defined it as the spirit spark atom. And today, probably the school would define it as a particle, as a singularity, trying to allude to the smallest and more transcendent thing that our consciousness can achieve. Hermes Trismegistus, in the Tabulas Magna Digna and other texts of the past, would refer to this principle as the description of God itself. Because in the universal teaching, God is not an external entity. God is this omnipresent principle in everyone, in everything. And that is why he would describe it as, and now friends, we have to tell you that the torture of bad drawing begins. So he would describe that as God is a boundless sphere which center is absolutely everywhere and the limits are nowhere. This is also the definition of our true being, our true self, that was described by the Rosicrucians of the 16th and 17th century, especially by Robert Flood in England, as the microcosm. He would say that our true self is a microcosm. It is a cell of the original universe. And that we are inhabitants of a microcosm, but we don't know it. And because we are totally separated from this true self that we live in, that separation is the true cause of our suffering. It is the true cause of the pain of our existence. And when this center of the microcosm awakens up, it resounds in the heart of that particular human being. And until the moment that that consciousness, that human being, is unified again with that principle, that person will go through a path of search for the truth, a path of search for his own true being. So that is at least one of the pillars, one of the main pillars of the universal teaching. We are not only this. We are much more than this. And our being is separated, truly divorced from our true original essence. But it's also important to know a little bit our structure and understand why we are divorced from this essence, from this true self. And as I said before, so I can attach this to the wall, right? Wait a minute. I believe you can all see it, right? And by the way, it's so simple you can memorize it. Okay. Well, I will not dare say that this is you, because it's going to look so ugly. This is me, okay? So this is the classic representation of a human being, right? For one moment, let's imagine that this is our physical body. And this it's already such a marvelous work of nature. You know, all the organs, all the systems, all the connections that we have working, most of them without the need of our consciousness to give a command or will. It's almost like a perfect machine of nature. But the universal teaching says that this is not only what we are. It says that we are much more than this as a time-space being, even if we are not connected with a microcosm. But we are a very complex life form, much beyond our physical body. And it says that we have a second body that has different layers that actually give life to the physical body. So, the physical body, everything that is manifested in our cosmos, in our planet, has a physical body, right? From a mineral to a person. The second body is actually what gives life to the second body, and is the second dimension of life. And plants, animals, and human beings, they have what we call an etheric or vital body. Okay? Many people actually see that body. Many people actually call that body the aura. People can make pictures of it, right? Small children, they see the etheric body of their parents or their family or friends, and they can tell if they are angry or not, right? Just by looking at the colors of the etheric body. But this second body is not also what defines us totally, because there is a third body that is just like an ovoid of energy around those two bodies. That is the astral body. That is the intelligence or the intelligent energy of our emotions. And that's what circulates and connects us with other people and with the environment, and allows us to have such a rich and strong emotional life. This is also a very ancient body. Just like the physical body has its organs and its complex systems, the vital body has a perfect image of those organs. And at the same time, all the lines of force and the energy nodes. For example, if you look at a Chinese medicine map, and all those lines, they're not just the meridians of your body, but they are the meridians of the etheric body. They are the organs of the etheric body. And the astral body also has organs. And I'm certain that many of you know those organs by another name, by the name of chakras, that in Sanskrit means wheels. So the organs of the astral body are actually the wheels of energy that circulate in and out of ourselves. We have countless wheels, but we can call 7 main ones. I hope there's 7 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes. So the crown chakra above our head, over the pineal gland. The third eye, right in front of our brain here, that is the center of our awareness. The larynx chakra, related to our upper or higher creative powers. The heart chakra, that is very much connected with all the astral currents that come in and out of ourselves. The solar plexus, that is the center of our organic intelligence. The pelvic chakra, that is related with our biological creative powers. And the root chakra, that connects us with all the karma and the energy of mankind and all existence, right? So those are the organs of the astral body. And we also have a fourth body in development. And we say in development because it's not totally fully developed. Only the first half of it is developed. That is the mental body. And the mental body is very volatile. It's a younger body. It doesn't have particular organs yet. It looks more like a, come in, please, please. It looks more like a cloud of energy. And this cloud of energy of our mental body fluctuates pretty much around ourselves. And that's why sometimes your thoughts are dominated by your mental images, sometimes by your emotions, sometimes by your reactions, because it is actually fluctuating over here. It's not totally attached to the head, because it's still not organized in organs. It's more like a cloud of energy. And these four bodies, they are driven by a quote-unquote pilot, right? Those that know the teachings of Ouspensky, for example, right? Or Gurdjieff. They would refer to this as the Fourfold Chariot. But there is a pilot to this chariot. And the pilot to this chariot is what we call the consciousness, or what symbolically in the past was called the soul. And that is so difficult. That is why it is so difficult sometimes to define the human soul. Because the soul is not part of the bodies. The soul is not a product of the bodies, but the soul is a kind of an intermediate between the true driving force that lies behind us and our exterior life. And it is also complex because it's not in one single place. It is a threefold consciousness that has a center of identity in the heart that actually coincides with the organic structures that we have in our heart. So the mental piece, the astral part, the etheric part, and the physical part. It is also located here or here. That is our biological consciousness. That is also part of our soul, part of our consciousness. And here, that is the center of our awareness. And most of the times what happens is that we try to drive this chariot, this fourfold personality, with that pilot. And not necessarily with all those aspects of that pilot, but we try to drive it with the center of our awareness, with our heads, right? And that's the conscious part. But the problem is that if we could use a very nice symbol to this state of consciousness, trying to drive this state of life, it would look like a gentleman sitting on the top of an iceberg with a pad, right? A pedal, right? And, help me out with the words that I stumble on, please. Okay, so it's a pedal, right? So, with a pedal, thinking that he or she actually determined the destiny of his or her life. And he says, or she says, I'm going this way. But actually the iceberg thinks otherwise. And while he says, I'm going this way, the iceberg is going this way. And he says, I'm going this way, right? And that is the root cause of thinking something and feeling something different and doing something totally different. Because those three centers are not connected by one driving force. They're volatile. And this is our conscious part, this is our subconscious part, this is our unconscious part. Yeah. And if this is an iceberg, the waters are here. and we can only see the image of ourselves reflected on it. So we are more or less aware of our thoughts, halfway aware of our feelings, but most of the times totally unaware of the true motives of our life, of the true gravity center that lies here in our organic brain that is formed around our solar plexus. That is the center of all of our past, of all of our karma, and that is actually driving us through the undercurrents of the sea of life. So what the universal teaching says is that until a major revolution happens in this system here, this system will be a phenomenon of time-space. And it will aggregate and disaggregate throughout the course of a human life. And also says that any attempt to achieve this reality, this true self, by merely developing the capabilities of this structure is just like the image of Icarus in the labyrinth, trying to assemble wings with feathers and wax. And the moment that you get close to the sun, the inner sun, that time-space construction unravels and you get back to the place where you belong to, the labyrinth of time-space. It also says that, trying to force a development of each one of these centers through exercises, through practices, through many other techniques of development of the egocentric structure or the egocentric consciousness will result in a bigger labyrinth. Maybe wider avenues or alleys in the labyrinth, taller walls. But in essence, the labyrinth will not be overcome. So we may try to develop our hidden seven senses, like telepathy, like clairvoyance, clairaudience, telekinesis, you name it. But we are only going to have what? A stronger egocentric awareness. We may try to develop our mystic powers, our healing power, to help others. It's very noble. But in the end, what we'll be doing is increase the amount of attachments that we have with other people's destinies and other people's karma and everything. We can develop, for example, our abilities to manage the Kundalini force, right? Through some practices to try to awaken it from the root chakra and flow in a forced and controlled way throughout the spine or the chakras. We'll awaken also hidden powers. But in the end, what is going to happen to us is that this structure will become a stronger egocentric being. So the wall between this reality and this reality will increase. So let's look at something different now. So what happens to this system here until they are fully integrated? the microcosm will be attached to the wheel of life and death. The microcosm will be attached to countless births and reincarnations. Other traditions also call this wheel the wheel of samsara, right? But what the fundamental piece of information is here, dear friends, is that this wheel, the being that is tied to this wheel, is not this one. It's not me. It's not you. We are a construction of time-space, and we will live once. The true being that is attached to this wheel is the microcosm. It is the true self. It is the true awareness. And this being will be attached to this wheel with all the accumulated karma of the previous lives, and we will be bound to it to another being of time-space, to another personality. Because these two should be one. It should be spirit, soul, and body. But soul, our consciousness, is not the true bridge between our reality and the spirit. That is why it is symbolically defined as a mortal soul. Because it has committed, quote unquote, the original sin. What sin? The sin of being apart from the spirit. And without a true link between our reality and the true self, this life will look like a wave in the ocean. It will come and it will go, looking like always the same wave, but never the same. So the microcosm will be attracted to our reality, and through the birth of a personality that receives from his or her parents a physical body, that personality will be bound to a microcosm. And then it will begin another life, forming the physical body when we are born, or receiving the physical body when we are born. When we go to our second childhood, or, and it varies a lot from one person to another, but, between the age of 5 to 8, the second body, the etheric body, becomes independent from the parents or from the families or from the people that take care of that child. And that child starts to function energetically on his or her own. When we become teenagers, it's not only, a storm of hormones, but what happens is also that all the accumulated karma of the past lives of the microcosm, and not of this personality, but of the microcosm, they start to flow through the organs of the astral body, through the chakras, and they integrate all the past of the microcosm with ourselves. So it's not without reason that happened to me. I don't know if that happened to you or is happening to you, that at a certain age, your parents look at you and say, "What happened to you? Huh? Where do you come from? What's going on with you? Why do you want to do these things? Or why do you want to follow this profession? Or what this, what that, etc." Right? It is because at that time we are becoming citizens not only of a biological life, but because of a true ancient life that we are being connected with. And for those that sometimes regret a little bit about their fate and their conditions of karma, etc., they are just like hand and glove. This microcosm was attached to life or called to life in the perfect karmic conditions, so that all the previous state of consciousness and pending issues of the previous lives of the microcosm, not of the personality, can actually continue and be used by this sentient being that is us as raw material for true transformation. That is why it is really not according to the universal teaching to deny your life and deny the conditions that you are in. Not to blindly accept them on a negative way, right? But the other way around, understanding them and truly realizing what they have to teach you. So the third body becomes active, the astral body. We grow up, and all of a sudden, in the end of our life as teenagers and in the beginning of our lives as young adults, our mental body takes shape. One day we look at ourselves in the mirror and we say, this is me. I think this way. I feel this way. I want to do this and that with my life. And then it means that your fourth body is minimally mature. You became independent as an individual, and your threefold consciousness, your awareness, or symbolically speaking, your soul, is concentric with your bodies and is driving your life through your threefold ego. And this threefold ego, the pilot of these four vehicles, will live we hope, a long life, 70, 80, 90, luckily 100, more than 100 years. A very productive life, a very important life, of course. But if nothing else happens, in the end, when the end of the functioning of the physical body comes, we will leave this garment, we will leave this vehicle behind, and we'll continue in what we call the afterlife. And dear friends, what the universal teaching says is something extremely important. In the past, if you look at the old ancient traditions like Egypt, like here the pre-Columbian nations of America, they would always refer to three worlds: our world, the underworld, and the spiritual world. And what many people understood was that our world is when we have our physical body. When we lose our physical body, we enter into two possibilities, hell or heaven, right? And if it's heaven, it's the spiritual life, and if it's hell, it's the underworld. Actually, it's not this. Actually, what we define as hell and heaven are mere aspects or mere personal views of the life that continues after we leave or we lose our physical body. Because hell and heaven, just like, unfortunately, the definition of God, is something that is so particular that, instead of binding people, may actually separate people, isn't it? So we continue our lives in the quote-unquote afterlife with the three vehicles that remain. Let me see if I have them in the right order. Yes. So the etheric body, the astral body, and the mental body. And the moment that we lose the physical body is the time where we go through all the experiences again. So that's why, for example, you read those books. They're really fascinating, of people that died and came back. Countless of them, right? They see their own inner astral world. So that's the tunnel they see. And they see their experiences that passed in front of their consciousness, from the end to the beginning of their lives. So that happens. Why? Because this part of our body loses the connection with the energy center that we call the chi, right? That's the Tai Chi. That's the Hara Chi, right? So that connection is severed. And in the moment that connection is severed, it's just like an old, photographic film. It unwinds, it winds again, right? And you see all your experiences go in front of your consciousness. That happens when you lose the physical body, so you live everything again in your memories. But this process, friends, it continues. And the etheric body eventually vanishes as well. And then all the feelings that we have lived and that we have caused, above all, we have the opportunity to live them again. Then the astral body also vanishes. And we live the emotions that we have caused in others and in ourselves again. Then the mental body also vanishes. And we have the opportunity to be confronted with all the basic ideas that we had about life and the ideas that have driven us. In other words, symbolically speaking, that's what the old traditions have called 7 heavens or 7 hells, right? And the purgatory and all those things. Actually, what's going on is that the consciousness is going through the experiences again to have the opportunity to learn. Just that. Until the personality that has not been integrated with the true self, with the true principle, with the microcosm, will vanish totally. And that is the meaning of that symbol, that very nice symbol of taking a drop of water of the Oblivion River, the Lattice River, right? As the Greek would call them. And then after the oblivion, everything becomes a record, a magnetic record in the magnetic spheres of the microcosm. And the microcosm goes through a period of silence, just like we have the 4 seasons, right? So it's just like a long winter again, where all the forces go deep, deep, deep in the microcosm and become a deep reality, a deep karmic record, until the spring of life begins again. We reach summer, that is the plenitude of life, all the bodies are functioning, the threefold ego is at full. Then we walk towards the end of our lives, fall, autumn, and then the afterlife continues, etc., etc. And dear friends, this is not evolution. Reincarnation here is a prison for the microcosm. Because the personality is just like one wave on the shore. It comes and it will go. And it is the microcosm that is the water that comes coming all over again. And we are not, as a matter of fact, we are not reincarnating the microcosm. So the microcosm is not getting better, or we are not getting better. with these reincarnations. Actually, this is a wheel of prison. And the true symbol in some traditions, when they speak about the 777 necessary reincarnations for you to be able to break free of the wheel of samsara, or the wheel of life and death, they don't refer to a number of reincarnations. Because when the microcosm is here, time stops. True time stops. It becomes a cyclic prison. Just like that funny movie, The Groundhog Day, that the guy is, imprisoned in one day of his life, living all over again the same experiences until he realizes that he needed to change. And when he changes, something totally new can begin. So what is this new thing? The new thing that must happen is as old as time. It is the only path that existed since the beginning, since the dawn of times. And we have, the external aspect of that path described into the traditions. In the traditions that took place in India, in China, in the Middle East, in Europe, in America, in Africa, everywhere. That path is the path to reintegrate these two and to break free from this. And it's not by forcing a development of this being. It's actually the opposite. We'll try to indicate that with a different color. It all starts with the spirit itself. That color is not helping much. If that center is not active, all the transformation that is necessary to really reunite those two and to break free from this prison cannot take place. And there is absolutely nothing that this being can do to awaken this principle. This principle, symbolically speaking, is the universe in us, is the center of the universe in us. It is God in us, is the eternity in us. So time cannot awaken eternity. That center can only be awakened after countless turns here. After it is so loaded with so many attempts of finding happiness, beauty, love, truth, justice, all those values that we look for like crazy externally. And we fail because we are a phenomenon of time-space, and those values are beyond time-space. So when this microcosm has gone through countless useless turns, because it didn't become better or worse, it just accumulated experiences, then you can have that psychological moment, that aha, that insight, that happens when this particle awakens. And when that particle awakens, it immediately touches the heart and resounds in the human heart like a calling, like a fire burning. And this fire burning is actually able to create a transformation in our identity, is able to show us that trying to fulfill all the dreams of our ego in this life is something absolutely useless. Not that our lives lose purpose, just the opposite. It gains the only true purpose. Because the center of the universe is active in us again. And through that, the three centers of our awareness can gradually awaken up and transform themselves from our innermost identity to our awareness to who we are and what we do. And when the spirit, the center of the microcosm, and the three aspects of our awareness, our consciousness, or symbolically speaking, our soul, they are awakened, then the fourfold personality can go through a different process. It is a true transformation of ourselves, a true organic rebirth. It is, truly speaking, what the ancient traditions referred to when they said that we are caterpillars that must go through a transformation, and the true being is the butterfly that lies within us. But the fact of the matter is we don't want to go through that transformation. We want to be caterpillars with wings, don't we? We don't want to go through that inner demolition or inner transformation to allow those forces to melt down all the resistances in us and transform those resistances into the structures of the new being. But this process can actually allow the manifestation of this new being that is reborn from the most subtle aspect to the more concrete. The mental aspect, the astral aspect, the etheric aspect, and then we may still carry this physical body, but it's not a prison anymore to the consciousness. Not that the consciousness will live in an astral trip or in the world of the dead. No. The consciousness will remain concentric, will remain totally self-aware, but will work in a totally different way. And to finish, that path that we have just mentioned is summarized in the symbol of the school. And by the way, the symbol is not exclusive to the school. If you go back in time, you're going to see other traditions using them. Just one tiny example. If you land in Cusco, in Peru, you're going to see the very same symbol there, created by the Incas more than 1,000 years ago. Everything starts with a center, with a spirit. The center can recreate the consciousness, the awareness. And when the spirit and the soul, or the center, the true self, and the human consciousness become one again through this transformation, then an organic transformation also may take place. What you think, feel, sense, and are. When the structure of the human personality is totally transformed by the spiritual principle, then the veil between time and eternity is no longer a barrier. and the human life becomes one with the microcosm. So that's, in a nutshell, that path and also the symbol of this school. Really concluding, this may sound a little bit complicated, a lot of information, but truly this is the only path that is open in front of mankind since the dawn of times. And that path was open in antiquity, that path was open in the Middle Ages, that path is open now for the modern human being. And if that path was not possible, it would be pointless to be sharing all this with you. So the purpose of the school is actually to announce that path for those that have been awakened, so that they can recognize that path in them and actually go that path by themselves in absolute freedom and autonomy. Thank you very much for your attention during this intro that was a bit longer than half an hour. But we would like to open now for questions. We still have 45 minutes until the next session. So we would love to hear your questions and address your questions. So feel free to ask them. Please. Here and there. Okay. No problem, please. Oh, sure, of course. What I will do is that I'll repeat your question to make sure two things, that they listen to it and to make sure that I understood. Okay? All right. So you're asking about materials and books, right? Where you can read about this. Yes. The school has published many, many books and magazines with, more traditional literature and more modern literature. You can find both of them in the internet. You can type Golden Rosycross in Amazon, okay, or in other languages, and you'll find a list of books that you can acquire. Some of them you may eventually read the first chapter, okay, to see if that is the kind of book that you're looking for. And in our website, you can also download summaries of the magazine that we published today that we call Pentagram, with articles that speak about this very same process. So yes, there's plenty of material. Okay. Please. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. Your question is, you're not a religion, but at the same time you referred many times to the Bible, right? In essence, right? Yes. And when we did that, and we started quoting the Bible by saying we are not quoting a religious text. What we are doing here, when we quote the Bible, is the same if we decided to quote the Mahabharata or the Odyssey or the oral traditions of the pre-Columbian nations, right? Because it is the same knowledge that is there. And, let's say the primitive Christians and the texts that were found untouched in the middle of the 20th century, right? In Nag Hammadi and places like that, you will always see that they were alluding to an inner truth. And that everything that those texts referred to were symbolic. There is one text from John that is a marvelous text. I think it is the Apocrypha of John, and in a certain point. And it's a very similar symbol of John in the cave of Patmos in the Apocalypse, right? But at a certain moment, he's in front of the cross, and he feels an inner impulse, and he runs to a cave at the top of a mountain. And inside that cave, and the cave is the heart, right? They are the etheric chambers of the heart. Just like Comenius said in the past about the labyrinth of the heart, right? The inner garden of the heart. So John runs to that inner place, and in that inner place, the inner voice, the voice of the silence, just like Blavatsky would describe, talks to his consciousness and says, John, at least one must understand what truly happened. What people think I have suffered, I didn't. And what they don't imagine that I have suffered, I have suffered. And he goes on and on and on. So it's a very beautiful text. So it alludes to what? That this reality is not, let's say, only what one religion brought, or what one philosophy brought, or what one school brought, but it is the same teaching that spread all over humanity. And the attempt of the school, the effort of the school, is to connect that teaching to the traditions that we are familiar with. And since the school started in Europe close to 100 years ago, the strongest tradition there was Christianity. So they alluded to a lot of things. And we also have a Christian background for the most part. But throughout the existence of the school, the founders of the school have written about that tradition, not only for the Christians, but for the Egyptians, for the Chinese, for the Hindi, and many others. In France. Yes, there was also a school in France that existed in the Middle Ages. Okay? Sure. Can I address her question before you, because she has an appointment and she must leave? Can I do that? Of course? Okay. So then after you. Thank you very much. Please. Okay. So we have... what I'll do, I'll anticipate all the information from the end, okay? And thanks for asking that question. So we believe that most of you came through the social network, social media. So we have a very active page in Facebook today. So there you find videos, and you find also the address of the 2 conference centers that we have in the United States. We have one in Chatham in the north of the New York State. It's really upstate, like 1.5 hours north of Manhattan. The other one is 1.5 hours north of Los Angeles in Bakersfield. There we have conferences and activities for the pupils that are in essence, gatherings where we read and we really go deep into this teaching, trying to bring this teaching to life in each one of us. Okay. You also have a couple of channels in YouTube. This kind of gathering here, we record them. Some of them are done face-to-face. Some of them are done directly virtually. So we can access them there too. And you have the website of the school with information on books and literature. But if you want actually to know the school, because this is just a public talk of the school, it's not the true work of the school. If you really want to know the school, you can write to the emails that you find there, or eventually, talk to some of the pupils of the school that live here in Florida to get more information. And in the near future, we hope that in the next weeks, we are going to publish a calendar of public activities for the Florida state, Miami and surroundings. That is going to be comprised of public talks like this or some other activities that we are planning to organize. So this is how you can remain in contact with the school. Thank you. Please. Sure. Your question is, at the beginning of the presentation, we mentioned a sentence from Delphi, that alludes to the gods, right? And then throughout the presentation, we have talked about one God. So how does that work? It's more or less like this? Yes? Okay. That quote from the Temple of Delphi is a threefold key. It says, know yourself. And you will know the gods, or the forces of nature that work in you and in all around you, and the whole universe. So it means that if a human being truly finds this essential principle, she or he will eventually be able to unlock all the quote-unquote mysteries that drive our lives. And by understanding who we truly are, for example, just for example, so we are not our thoughts. Our thoughts are elemental beings that have life by themselves. The same for our emotions and the same for our reactions. So we are also not our identity, because our identity, as Buddha would say, comes from attachment. And attachment is the source not of life but of pain. And the source of pain in our consciousness is because we are attached to the veils that wrap us, and we believe we are our thoughts, and we suffer. We believe we are our emotions, and we suffer. The same for our reactions. So, with this key, by knowing your true self, understanding the works of the quote-unquote gods, the powers of nature that dominate our lives, right? We can understand the wheels of life and death. And we can also understand the whole universe. And that was also the meaning of that sentence of Hermes Trismegistus when he said that below as above, above as below. So you can bring into unity all the manifestation of life. I hope that I have helped you a little bit. So there's a question here and a question there. Is that okay? You have another one. Okay. So how do I do it? I do this, this, and that. Okay. Thank you. Please. Yes. It's a very good question. What does the school say about being stuck in this wheel of reincarnation? Okay. It's a very tricky thing. It's any explanation that we can give you, or anybody, or that was given in all the times, is a tricky explanation, because it is always given from the standpoint of the prisoner trying to understand what's outside of the prison. So it is more or less like this, as if you were inside of a bubble made of mirrors, or a big mirror bubble, and you are inside of it. When you look forward, and you see all your images getting smaller, smaller, we normally call that future. When we look back and we see those tiny images going, we call it past. And when we look sideways, we normally tend to project our choices and our standpoint to the world as if the world was made of good and evil. Everything that we attach to or everything that we identify ourselves with, we call it good. And everything that gets further and further away from our attachment point in our consciousness, we tend to call it evil. So anything that we build as an explanation utilizes those 4 quadrants. So that's why, for example, again in the Bible, right? You have the myth of the fall of man. In the Greek tradition, you have the myth of Narcissus becoming enamored by his own image and diving into the waters. Right? All we know is that this process that was described, looking backwards, as if it was in the past, and freedom or enlightenment as something that could eventually help happen in the future, right? We know that those aspects, they are not a phenomenon of time. We are a phenomenon of time. And the moment that we dive into time, all we see is time. So all those phenomena, they are happening. So Narcissus, me, I'm choosing all the time if I want to become enamored by the image of myself, or if I'm going to serve the true purpose of existence. But I must be aware of it. So, all we know is that our consciousness is awakened and self-identified with its vehicles. And until the moment that we realize how attached we are and how egocentric we are, we'll not break free of this prison. So in one word, the cause of all of this is ego. An egocentric consciousness that must transcend and overcome itself. Okay. The second question was here. Thank you. Could you please repeat the last part? Uh-huh. Well, yes and no. All those aspects that we hear, like a perfect balance in our subtle vehicles, or the bodies, as we said, or a true balance in our consciousness, or a lucid consciousness, or true awareness, or a true objective awareness. All those aspects of balance and harmony, they can be temporarily produced with exercises and practices. So people try to, for example, to balance your chakras with crystals and stones. And we can try to heal others with the lines of forces of our etheric body, right? We can try to to influence, even in a positive way, other people with our thoughts and even our hidden senses, etc. We can try to achieve true peace and integration through a meditative state of mind. All those methods, they are valid to bring us to the frontier and to show that unless a true transformation in this construction that we call ourselves takes place, that we will be just like, those waves of the sea. We'll reach a top and then we'll get back to the true state of consciousness and life. We'll get back to who we truly are. All those aspects, so that's the no part, okay? The yes part now. All those aspects should be a consequence, a natural consequence of a true transformation. So the alignment of the bodies, that should be a consequence of the balance of the consciousness, should work as a result of the transformation of the consciousness, and not the other way around. Exactly. Yes. Yes. Yes, it should be a consequence. For example, there is a symbolic indication of that. That is actually a sequence of Fibonacci, or the golden measure, right? That is also the purpose of using a rose. A rose is nothing but Phi all over again. Choo, 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 right? And it says that if you walk one step with that principle, or if you walk a mile with it, in turn this will walk two with you. In other words, it is this rose that becomes to blossom. And the blossoming of this true kundalini of the heart that cannot be controlled by the egocentric consciousness, that transforms the heart, the center of identity in the heart. The center of identity in the heart transforms the center of awareness in our head. And when the two are, fundamentally united again, and you have a unity between your heart and your head, then this new state of consciousness can begin to transform your life. Okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a great question. I mean, I'll try to rephrase it to make sure that I understood and everybody hears it. It says, breaking through this karmic cycle, connecting through this true force in you, sounds a little bit passive. What should we actually do? That's a great question. You know why? Because we are trained since the day that we were born to do something. Especially us Westerns. I mean, we were trained to act, right? And to intervene and to produce the reality according to what we see, etc., etc. Fine. This path is a big, big fight. It is a big struggle. It is the struggle to overcome yourself. That is the meaning of he who overcomes, he or she overcomes himself, is able to overcome everything, or is the biggest conqueror. So this path is the path of overcoming yourself. And how can that happen? And what is the effort of the pupil on that path? It's a very funny thing, and a very tricky thing. It begins by observing. First of all, everything begins with this center being active, and by creating a true magnetic storm in the center of our identity, in the center of our soul. What turns us, not necessarily according to our choice, a seeker of the truth in the world. And that's what makes us look for the reality that is behind the reality. And that looks for the answers of the questions that we can hardly formulate ourselves. That forces us to look for a true transformation in life. And the moment that this happens, we start to seek, we start to look for those answers. That power is just like a magnetic storm on the compass of your ego, of my ego. It takes the needle of the compass that was calmly pointing north. In other words, pointing to the desires and the dreams and the wishes of that threefold ego before. And that may happen during a point in our lives that might have happened in previous lives of the microcosm. And the first breath we have in this life is already a search. Well, this needle of this compass here will be taken by this inner storm and will literally go crazy, because it will start pointing to almost any direction, and we'll begin to look for, we'll begin to seek for something that makes us whole, but it's still not there. Based on this force that is very, very disconcerting, very annoying to the consciousness, because the consciousness wants control, the consciousness wants clarity and everything else, but this force, this power brings, unsettlement. Based on this, we have the capacity to start observing ourselves. But it's a different kind of observation. It's not judgmental. It's not saying this is right, this is wrong, let me correct it at once. No, because then you're just wandering again in the labyrinth of mirrors. It is observing where your thoughts come from. If we live a cycle like this in our whole life, our thoughts, they do the same. They emerge from the subconscious. They circulate through our consciousness. They obtain nourishment from our subtle bodies. And then they dive again in the sea, the waters of the sea of life, and they become invisible to our consciousness again. They live like that in us. If you really pay attention to some repetitive thoughts, it's almost like clockwork. One particular situation in the outside makes them active again, and there we go, like a robot. So the path begins that way, recognizing how conditioned we are and how attached and how what a prisoner we are. And after we have truly observed that and regained a connection with the true center of ourselves and some level of awareness, then our reactions can become visible to us. Because most of the times, we react first. We feel the consequences of what we've done second, and we rationalize in the third place, isn't it? I forget the name of the scientist from India, but he was able to map the sequence of the synapses, explaining how our mind rationalizes everything that we do, pretending to itself that it's actually the mind that is controlling everything. That is the self-delusion that we live in. So the path is a big effort, because in front of all that, you should observe and regain freedom. And by doing that, you are actually reducing the power or the conditioning that those forces have in your own consciousness. So that's the process. That's a battle of a whole life. And that battle, that is the continued battle of all life, okay, is what allow a true transformation. And the transformation is a consequence of a change in consciousness, and not the other way around. One more thing. Okay. Yeah. What the school has done in the beginning, in the first decades of its existence, was to explain astrology exactly as you were doing right now. Our being, okay, we have the 7 chakras, and connected to the 7 chakras, we have the 12 doors of our respiration field. That when we look outside, we see as the 12 tones, the 12 signs, the 12 hours, and everything. But it's also from inside out, right? It's also we are looking at a mirror of ourselves. And according to the different doors, or the 12 doors that we have here, is the different kind of energy or points of your consciousness and your vehicles that are being activated. So that helps you understand, of course, it does help you understand where you're stuck. But the problem, there's a tiny problem with that. It's because it is so fascinating, right? And it's such a perfect mirror that many, many times the pupils became absolutely in love. They fell in love with the astrological image of themselves. And instead of using that as a true roadmap to break free of that, they started to utilize that to become specialists in the labyrinth, right? And that is the reason why today we don't go into the details of that, but we explain how it works, and we allow the own consciousness of the pupil to recognize those forces in action in him or her, so that intuitively the soul can break through the mysteries of what is called destiny or not. Okay? So I think we have a question here. No, we had a question there long before. I'm sorry. Yes. We have 15 minutes, so we still have time for questions. Don't worry, please. So it's there, here, and there. Okay. Sorry. So the questions are, we all have ego. We need it, so how can we use it? When should we use it? And in this process, what should we do with it? And mhm. 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 Right. And I think everybody heard that. And then the second question is about karma. Right. So we'll try to summarize it. Okay. And if not, we'll try to continue later. Okay. Ego. Our reactions are there all the time. Everything is actually a matter of driving or being driven. If we don't know who we are, it's just like if we were in a dark room and somebody was coming and hitting us. We cannot defend ourselves. We cannot understand what's going on. And we cannot transform it. So why self-knowledge is the first step of that path? Because it is as if you had a torch inside of that dark room. And with that torch, you can observe the forces in action in you. Those forces, they are stronger if our consciousness is unaware of them. But the moment that we become aware of them, they reduce the power that they can exert on us. It's not that we are going to become persons without an identity or without a personality or without a purpose in life. No. The prison that we are in, that is the fact that we are driven by those forces all the time, that put our desires and emotion in motion, and that create this circulation, this endless circulation of thoughts around us. The moment that these things become visible, it is as if you finally could see the person approaching you to hit you. It will happen because we have a physical body, we are animals, right? And we must survive and we must exist, and we can't pretend that we are saints, but if we are in danger, we will feel fear. We will run, we'll try to attack, right? That's reality. But recognizing that reality and seeing how it works in you, gradually make that reality become a servant to its original purpose. Using again the symbol of the chariot, what is our current state of consciousness and life? And that image is the image of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky, right? They say that our consciousness is just like a drunken driver that lost control of the two other bodies, right? So the mental body, the drunken driver, lost control of the two other bodies, the two horses, the astral body and the etheric body. And they went wild, and they are driving the chariot that is our existence outside of the original path. And they are hurting, they are dismantling the chariot because of that activity. Once the true owner of the chariot is discovered, and he is enchained with his mouth shut and his eyes covered, put in the trunk of the chariot. If the driver regains some lucidity and sobriety, and frees up the true owner of the chariot, then the owner, the Lord of the chariot, will put order. And the mind will follow the orders of the owner and will have the power of this original center to put in order and to put in balance the astral body and the etheric body. And we'll continue to live our lives as organic beings with a physical body, etc. But the magnitude of that existence in our consciousness will be absolutely transformed. Time. Yeah. Karma. Okay? And what we'll do is, since we are going to give the other group like 10 minutes that we can start, before we start, the questions that we were not able to address now, we'll try to address outside quickly, okay? So that you don't leave with an unanswered question, okay? Karma. Karma is like time in a loop. It's a repetitive experience because it was not able to reach a synthesis. In alchemy, it is like raw material without consciousness. And it is registered throughout all our microcosm and reflects on ourselves. And it's not that we can call good karma and bad karma because they are just the recording of our experiences. They are pending items. Pending of understanding, pending of self-awareness, self-knowledge. This being, okay, if the true goal of life was not achieved, all the experiences will continue to be there as driving forces for a next existence of the microcosm attached to the personality that lives only once. So karma is not bad, karma is not good. Karma is the raw material of the alchemical transformation in us. Okay? Thank you very much. So I believe that we should eventually conclude it. If we have other questions, let's try to use this corner here so we can continue with them. Yes, for future meetings, you do have it. So thank you very much for your participation. We'll continue with the unanswered questions here.